This module will introduce us to some of the key developments of post-war America from roughly the 1940s to the 1980s. The key thing that we want to consider is to the extent to which the United States was actually a force for freedom and democracy during the Cold War. Now, of course, you know that this was the rhetoric that came from the United States. They had fought World War II on the ideological grounds that they were making the world safe for democracy, that they were fighting against the fascist totalitarian dictatorships. But we know that there was also some problems with that in the sense that they fought on the same side as a totalitarian dictatorship under Stalin. We've already considered some ways in which the United States was in foreign policy not entirely consistent with their national ideology. When you consider the atrocities and some of the rationales for the Vietnam War, their intervention in Latin America, their policy of coexistence with communism, they didn't really, during the period of détente following Nixon, they didn't really seek to throw out communists or oppose them in places like China because it was very convenient to have a better relationship with a country that was opposed to the Soviets. And they also supported many undemocratic regimes in places like Chile, Pakistan, Iran, and South Korea. On the other hand, the United States was also a positive force for democracy and freedom in their foreign policy. You can consider the Marshall Plan, and you can consider how they really did work to prevent communist expansion into Western Berlin. A great example of that, of course, would be the Berlin airlift of 1948. So the key thing here, however, is we're not focusing so much on the foreign policies. We're now going to focus on what American society was like in the 1940s and 1950s and 1960s. We can take James Patterson here, an American historian, who says that many middle-class Americans took the things that they took for granted in the 1960s scarcely existed for the 139.9 million people who inhabited the 48 states in 1945. Consider a few of these things: supermarkets, malls, fast food chains, residential air conditioning, ranch-style homes, freezers, dishwashers, detergents, ballpoint pens, hi-fi stereos, tape recorders, long-playing records, Polaroid cameras, computers and transistors, four-lane highways, automatic transmissions and direction signals, tubeless tires and power steering. None of these things existed before World War II, and in many ways this describes the consumerist society that we've become very acquainted with here in North America today. Are these things fundamentally good? Has this been advantageous to our society? Well, the easy answer is probably yes, and that these were the things that ultimately defeated communism, not American military might, but the quality of life that capitalist free market economies were able to offer that the socialist planned economies just couldn't compete with. So the key inquiry here then is to what extent Americans really did enjoy freedom and prosperity at home during this period. The first sort of era to consider is the Truman and Eisenhower era from the 1940s to 1960s. We've already looked at many of the key international events from the Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan, through the Cold War, the incidents of the Suez Crisis, U-2 incident, etc. These are typically remembered as a golden age in American history. It's important for us to consider whether or not that's actually accurate. Some key developments that did occur during this period might include the fact that there was a massive housing boom as veterans were returning to America looking for homes, looking to get out of the escape from the poverty and the unemployment that they had known in the 1930s. The war had caused a bit of an economic boom in the United States, and as a result, the American economy began to take off. There was also a baby boom, a rapid increase in birth rates after 1945, and a lot of the economic boom was fueled by automobile sales and housing sales, particularly in suburbs, which we'll look at for our disc assignment. Cars really are the key thing that have changed how Americans live and, of course, created a massive dependency on highways and cheap oil.